You ungrateful brat! This is garbage! My mother screamed, hurling my carefully crafted anniversary gift straight into the dumpster behind our family restaurant. That's when I calmly walked into her bedroom, collected every single one of her prescription bottles, and drove them to the pharmacy disposal bin across town. The panic in her voice when she realized what I'd done 3 hours later, worth every second of the chaos that followed. Let me tell you, I never thought a simple handmade photo album would lead to me temporarily confiscating my own mother's blood pressure medication. But sometimes, the people who raised you need to learn that actions have consequences, even at 68 years old. It was supposed to be a celebration. My parents, Alejandro and Esperanza Valdez, were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary, and I, Catalina Isabelle Valdez, 34 years old and a graphic designer living in the Arts District of Albuquerque, New Mexico, had spent 3 months creating what I thought was the perfect tribute to their love story. Working as a freelance graphic designer doesn't pay like a traditional corporate job, but it gives me the creative freedom I've craved since leaving my suffocating marketing position at Sandia Technologies 2 years ago. And this anniversary gift, this was the ultimate passion project, the kind of meaningful work that reminded me why I'd chosen art over the predictable paycheck my mother constantly lectured me about. I'd been secretly collecting photos, documents, and mementos from family members scattered across New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado. This wasn't just some thrown-together scrapbook. I'm talking about 127 pages of meticulously curated memories, professionally designed and bound in genuine leather that I'd sourced from a specialty shop in Santa Fe. The project had started in May, 3 months before their anniversary celebration in August. I'd reached out to dozens of relatives, tracked down old friends from their early days in Las Cruces, and even contacted former employees from their restaurant, Corazón de Oro, which they'd built from nothing in the historic Old Town district of Albuquerque. Every page told a story. I digitally restored their faded engagement photos from 1983. Young Esperanza in a simple white dress with delicate lace sleeves, Papa Alejandro in his best suit with his hair slicked back, both of them standing awkwardly but radiantly happy outside the San Felipe de Neri church. Their wedding photos came next, a small ceremony with maybe 30 people, but you could see the pure joy radiating from every frame. Then came the struggle years. Photos of them painting the restaurant walls themselves in 1987, Mama Esperanza, 8 months pregnant with me, still insisting on helping with the renovation. Pictures of Papa working 2 jobs while they waited for the restaurant to turn profitable, coming home exhausted but always stopping to kiss Mama's forehead and rub her swollen belly where I was growing. I'd included photos from my childhood that I'd found in my grandmother Abuela Carmen's collection. Me as a toddler, helping in the restaurant kitchen, standing on a wooden crate to reach the counter, flour in my dark hair and a wooden spoon in my hand. My younger brother Diego, at 5 years old, learning to fold napkins during the slow afternoon hours, his tongue poking out in concentration. The middle section chronicled the restaurant's gradual success through the 1990s and early 2000s. I'd tracked down newspaper clippings from the Albuquerque Journal when Corazón de Oro won Best Family Restaurant 3 years running. Photos of my parents with local politicians who'd stop by during campaign season, always genuine in their appreciation for Mama's famous green chile enchiladas and Papa's perfectly seasoned carne asada. I'd spent hours interviewing family members for quotes and memories to include throughout the album. Abuela Carmen had shared stories about Mama's early days in Albuquerque, how she'd arrived at 19 speaking limited English, but determined to build a life with the Irish-Mexican boy she'd fallen in love with in Las Cruces. Uncle Roberto had contributed stories about Papa's work ethic, how he'd take construction jobs during the day and work at the restaurant until midnight, 7 days a week for the first 3 years. The most treasured inclusion was a letter I'd found in Mama's jewelry box, a love note Papa had written her during their engagement, promising her that someday they'd own their own business and never have to worry about money again. I'd carefully photographed it and included it on a page surrounded by photos of their thriving restaurant, his promise kept after 40 years of partnership. The final pages brought their story to the present day, Recent photos from last Christmas with the whole family gathered around a restaurant's largest table. Diego with his wife Sofia and their 3-year-old son Mateo, all of us laughing at something Papa had said. The last image was a candid shot I'd taken just 2 months ago. Mama and Papa working side by side in the kitchen during the lunch rush, their movements synchronized after 40 years of partnership, still reaching for each other during quiet moments. I'd invested over $600 in this project, money I genuinely couldn't spare on my inconsistent freelancer income, but this was my parents' 40th anniversary. They'd sacrificed everything to build Corazón de Oro, working 14-hour days through my entire childhood, missing school events and family gatherings because the restaurant demanded constant attention. They'd put Diego and me through college on the profits from selling enchiladas and sopapillas, never complaining about the exhaustion that was etched into their faces by the time I graduated high school. They deserved something extraordinary. But if I'm being completely honest, this gift was also my way of trying to prove something to Mama. Esperanza Valdez was a 5'2" force of nature who'd immigrated from Chihuahua at 19, married my Irish-American father, and spent 4 decades proving that she could outwork, outstubborn, and out-argue anyone who dared question her methods or her family's choices. She'd built the restaurant's reputation through sheer determination and an unwavering commitment to quality. Every tortilla was made by hand every morning. Every salsa was prepared fresh daily using recipes she'd learned from her own mother. Every customer was treated like family, whether they ordered a simple breakfast burrito or brought 20 people for a celebration. But lately, especially since I'd left my stable job at Sandia Technologies, Mama's protective instincts had morphed into constant criticism. What used to be loving concern about my future had become pointed attacks on my life choices during every family interaction. "Catalina, you're 34 years old," she'd say during our mandatory Sunday dinners at the restaurant, her voice carrying that edge that made me feel like a teenager being scolded. "Your brother Diego has a house in West Side, a wife, a son, and a steady job as an engineer at the National Lab. What do you have to show for your life?" What she refused to acknowledge was that I was actually succeeding. My freelance graphic design business had grown steadily over 2 years. I had regular clients, including 3 local nonprofits, a boutique hotel in Santa Fe, and 2 tech startups. My portfolio was strong, my reputation was solid, and yes, my 1-bedroom loft apartment in the Arts District might be small, but it was in the coolest part of Albuquerque, and I'd transformed it into a space that reflected my creativity and independence. I was proud of my life. I set my own schedule, chose projects that excited me, and had built something entirely my own. But none of that seemed to matter to Mama. In her worldview, if you weren't climbing a traditional corporate ladder with benefits and a retirement plan, you were essentially wasting your education and disappointing your family. The worst part was how she'd begun criticizing my choices in front of other family members. During Diego's birthday dinner last month, she'd spent 20 minutes explaining to our cousins how worried she was about my unstable career path and my inability to settle down. When our family friend, Mrs. Herrera, asked about my work, Mama had actually said, "Oh, Catalina does little art projects for people who can't afford real advertising agencies." Little art projects? That's how she described the logo I'd designed for the Acequia Community Center, the fundraising materials I'd created for the Animal Humane Association, the brand identity I'd developed for Luna's Bakery that had helped them double their customer base. But I'd convinced myself that this anniversary gift would change things. This photo album would show Mama that my creative skills could produce something meaningful, something that honored our family's history in a way that no corporate job ever could. It would prove that being an artist wasn't just self-indulgent, it was a way of preserving and celebrating the love that had built our family. I should have known better. The anniversary party was planned for Saturday afternoon at Corazón de Oro. The restaurant would be closed to regular customers from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., and we'd invited about 60 family members and longtime friends to celebrate. I'd been coordinating with Diego, who lived in West Side with his wife Sofia and their adorable 3-year-old son Mateo. Diego had handled the practical elements, arranging tables, coordinating with the mariachi band, and organizing the catering of Mama's signature dishes. Meanwhile, I'd taken responsibility for what I called the emotional centerpiece of the celebration, a formal presentation of the anniversary gift that would serve as a tribute to their incredible journey together. I was genuinely excited. This album represented not just months of work, but a kind of detective mission that had reconnected me with family members I hadn't spoken to in years. I'd called cousins in Colorado, tracked down Papa's old construction crew buddies, and even reached out to customers who'd become like family over the decades. Every conversation had revealed new layers to my parents' story. Tia Rosa had shared photos from Mama's baby shower when she was pregnant with me, including images of Papa painting the nursery walls himself because they couldn't afford to hire someone. Primo Eduardo had contributed pictures from the restaurant's grand opening in 1987, including shots of the whole extended family working together to serve the first customers. I discovered that during the restaurant's first year, when money was so tight they were considering closing, the local parish had organized a fundraising dinner to help them stay afloat. The photos from that night, our entire community coming together to support their dream, had made me cry when I'd first seen them. This wasn't just a photo album. It was a love letter to my parents' resilience, a testament to what two people could build together through determination and mutual support. It was everything I believed about family, commitment, and the American dream, documented in beautiful detail. The album was bound in rich burgundy leather with gold embossing that read Alejandro and Esperanza, 40 Years of Love in elegant script. I'd arranged for custom tissue paper between sections and had even included a pocket in the back cover containing copies of important documents, their marriage certificate, the restaurant's original business license, and Papa's citizenship papers from 1985.
Saturday morning, I arrived at Corazón de Oro 3 hours before the party to help with final preparations. The restaurant looked magical. Diego had strung warm white lights throughout the dining room, created a memory wall featuring enlarged photos of my parents through the decades, and arranged the tables so everyone could see the small stage area where we'd planned the gift presentations. The familiar smells of the restaurant, cumin, fresh cilantro, simmering green chile, and the warm corn scent of fresh tortillas filled the air. Papa was in his element, moving between the kitchen and dining room with the focused energy of someone who'd spent decades perfecting every detail of his craft. "Mija!" Papa called out when he saw me walk in carrying the carefully wrapped photo album. "Let me see what masterpiece my artistic daughter has created for us." "Not yet, Papa," I laughed, using the nickname I'd called him since childhood. "You have to wait for the ceremony with everyone else, but I promise you're going to love it." But Mama was already eyeing the package with the suspicious expression I knew too well. "What is that thing, Catalina? Please tell me you didn't spend money you don't have on something impractical." My stomach immediately tightened. "It's your anniversary gift, Mama. Something special I made for you and Papa to commemorate your 40 years together." "Made?" Her voice carried that particular tone, the one that meant she'd already decided to disapprove before seeing what I was presenting. "Catalina, mija, please tell me you didn't spend money on some arts and crafts project instead of buying us something we can actually use." "It's not arts and crafts, Mama. It's a professional quality photo album documenting your entire relationship. I spent 3 months collecting photos and stories from the whole family." "A photo album?" She actually laughed, but there was no warmth in the sound. "Catalina, mija, please tell me you didn't spend money on some arts and crafts project instead of buying us something we can actually use." My stomach immediately tightened. "It's your anniversary gift, Mama. Something special I made for you and Papa to commemorate your 40 years together." "Made?" "Catalina, mija, please tell me you didn't waste money on some arts and crafts project instead of buying us something we can actually use." "It's not arts and crafts, Mama. It's a professional quality photo album documenting your entire relationship. I spent 3 months collecting photos and stories from the whole family. A photo album. She actually laughed, but there was no warmth in the sound. Catalina, we have boxes and boxes of photos already collecting dust in the closet. What we need are practical gifts that help the restaurant or the house. Diego bought us that beautiful new commercial mixer for the kitchen. Now that's something useful, something that makes sense for people our age. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. Maybe you should actually look at it before you decide it's not useful. I don't need to look at it to know what it is, mija. This is exactly the kind of expensive hobby project that nobody asked for. You think because you make it pretty and spend money, we'll be impressed. But what we really need is for you to think practically about what would actually help us. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of early guests, but I could feel Mama's disapproval radiating toward me like heat from the kitchen ovens. For the next 2 hours, as family members filled the restaurant with laughter and stories, I carried that knot of anxiety in my stomach, second-guessing everything about the gift I'd been so proud of just hours earlier. The party was beautiful. Tia Rosa had brought 3 generations of family photos to add to Diego's memory wall. The mariachi band played songs that had been popular during my parents' early dating years. Abuela Carmen, despite being 87 years old, insisted on helping serve drinks and telling anyone who'd listen about how proud she was of the life Mama and Papa had built together. For a while, I managed to push aside my earlier conversation with Mama and enjoy watching my parents be celebrated by their community. Papa was glowing, moving from table to table, sharing stories and accepting congratulations. Even Mama seemed to be having fun, graciously accepting compliments about the food and the restaurant's continued success after 40 years in business. Then came time for the gift presentations. Diego went first, and his presentation was flawless. He'd prepared a brief speech about how our parents had taught us that success came through hard work and dedication, and how their marriage had been the foundation for everything our family had accomplished. Then he presented the commercial mixer, a beautiful, practical machine that would genuinely make their daily work easier. Everyone applauded, Mama beamed with obvious pride, and Papa immediately started examining the mixer with the enthusiasm of someone who truly appreciated quality kitchen equipment. "This is perfect, Diego," Mama announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This is exactly what we needed. Practical, useful, something that shows you really understand our life and our work." Then all eyes turned to me. I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs, and lifted the wrapped photo album. "Mama, Papa, this gift is for both of you, but it's also for everyone in this room who wants to understand what 40 years of true love and partnership actually looks like." I handed the album to Mama first, watching her face carefully as she unwrapped it. The burgundy leather gleamed under the restaurant's warm lighting, and I saw several family members lean forward with interest. When Mama opened the cover to reveal the first page, their engagement photos surrounded by elegant design work and the inscription, "Alejandro and Esperanza, a love story 40 years in the making," I held my breath. For just a moment, I thought I saw something soften in her expression. She turned the page slowly, taking in the wedding photos, the early restaurant pictures, images of their young family that she probably hadn't seen in decades.
"Where did you find all these pictures, mija?" she asked, and her tone was almost wondering. "I collected them from everyone. Abuela Carmen, Tia Rosa, Uncle Roberto, even some of your old customers who've become family friends. I wanted to tell the complete story of your love and your success." She continued flipping through pages, and I watched other family members gathering closer to see over her shoulder. There were murmurs of recognition and appreciation as people spotted themselves in various photos throughout the decades. Then Mama reached page 23, which featured a particularly meaningful section I'd titled "Building Dreams Together." It showcased photos from 1989 and 1990, the restaurant's early years when money was extremely tight, but their partnership was strongest. The centerpiece was a candid photo that Tia Rosa had taken during one of those brutal dinner rushes. Mama and Papa working side by side in the tiny kitchen, both exhausted and covered in flour, but Papa's hand resting gently on Mama's lower back as they moved around each other with the synchronized grace of true partners. I'd spent hours on the design of this page, using warm colors and elegant typography to frame these images of struggle and love. Below the main photo, I'd included a quote from Uncle Roberto. I never saw two people work harder or support each other more completely. They built something beautiful together. Mama stared at that page for a long time, long enough that the entire restaurant fell silent, 60 people waiting to see her reaction to this tribute to her marriage. Then, Mama closed the album with a sharp snap that echoed through the quiet room. "This is completely inappropriate, Catalina." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around us, I could feel the collective intake of breath from our family and friends. "Mama?" I managed to whisper. "What do you mean?" "These are private family photos," she announced, her voice loud enough to carry to every corner of the restaurant. "Personal moments that were never meant to be put on display like some kind of coffee table book for people to flip through whenever they feel like it." I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. "It's not for people to flip through, Mama. It's for you and Papa. It's a celebration of your love story, your success." "It's an invasion of privacy disguised as sentimentality," she cut me off. "And it's exactly the kind of impractical, self-indulgent nonsense I'd expect from someone who thinks being an artist is more important than understanding what people actually need." The silence in the restaurant was deafening. 60 people, our entire extended family, longtime friends, customers who'd become like family over the decades, were witnessing my mother publicly humiliate me at their anniversary celebration. Papa looked mortified. "Esperanza, maybe we should look at more of it before." "Alejandro, don't encourage this behavior," Mama interrupted, her voice sharp with authority. "Catalina spent money she doesn't have on a project nobody asked for, and now she expects us to be grateful for her poor decision-making and lack of practical thinking." That's when something inside me finally snapped. All those years of criticism, all those comments about my unstable career and my impractical life choices, all those moments when she'd made me feel small and foolish for pursuing my dreams, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. "You know what, Mama?" I said, standing up and reaching for the album. "This was incredibly poor judgment on my part." "Catalina, no!" Papa started to protest, but I was already taking the album from Mama's hands. She actually smiled as she handed it over, a cold, satisfied expression that told me everything I needed to know about her true feelings. "Fine," she said with obvious pleasure. "Take your little art project and do whatever you want with it. Just don't expect me to pretend it's something it's not." I held the album against my chest, feeling the weight of all those carefully preserved memories, all those hours of love and research and creative work, and looked around at the faces of my family members. Some looked mortified. Others seemed uncomfortable. A few appeared to be enjoying the drama. "You know what the saddest part is, Mama?" I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent restaurant. "Every single person in this room would treasure something like this. Every single person except the one person who taught me that family memories were supposed to matter most." I started walking towards the exit, but Mama wasn't finished with me yet. "Catalina, don't you dare walk out of here and make this whole celebration about you and your hurt feelings." I stopped and turned around one final time. That's when I saw it clearly. She wasn't upset about privacy concerns or practical considerations. She was enjoying this moment. She was savoring the opportunity to put me in my place in front of everyone that mattered to our family. This was never about the gift at all, Mama. This was about control, about making sure I knew exactly where I stood in her hierarchy of acceptable life choices. This was never about me, Mama, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. This was about celebrating you and Papa. But apparently,
Even that's wrong when it comes from your disappointing daughter. And with that, I walked out of Corazon de Oro, leaving behind the sound of uncomfortable murmurs and Papa's voice desperately trying to salvage what was left of their anniversary celebration.
But as I reached my car, still clutching the album that represented months of love and work, I realized something important. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't hurt or embarrassed or desperate for her approval. I was absolutely furious. And fury, I was about to discover, was a much more useful emotion than heartbreak. The real story was just beginning, and Mama had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I drove straight to Mama's house on Calle Luna, my hands shaking with rage. Using my spare key, I walked into her bedroom and methodically collected every prescription bottle, blood pressure medication, cholesterol pills, diabetes management drugs, everything keeping her 68-year-old body functioning. Then, I drove to the CVS pharmacy disposal bin across town and watched every bottle disappear into the secure container. 3 hours later, my phone exploded. "Catalina, where are my medications?" "In the same place as my gift, Mama. Thrown away like garbage?" The panic in her voice was immediate. "This isn't the same thing. I need those." And I needed my mother to show basic respect for something I spent 3 months creating. But here we are. Papa called next, desperate. "Mija, this is dangerous. Your mother could have a medical emergency." Then she should have thought about consequences before humiliating me publicly. It took 6 hours of frantic calls, Papa driving to 3 pharmacies, and emergency prescriptions from her doctor before Mama got her medications back. Meanwhile, I blocked their numbers and spent the evening designing a new business logo for myself. 2 weeks later, Great Aunt Dolores called. "Your mother wants to apologize. She's been crying every day since the party." "Actions have consequences, Tia. She taught me that." 6 months later, my design business had doubled. I'd finally learned the lesson Mama never intended to teach. Sometimes, the people who claim to love you are the ones holding you back the most. And sometimes, throwing away their security for a few hours helps them understand exactly how it feels.